Snow had nearly erased the road when a retired Navy SEAL saw a German shepherd puppy lying beside a closed mountain trail. The dog was freezing, exhausted, and far too weak to fight. Yet one paw remained locked over an old military bag. When the bag suddenly crackled with a ranger's voice, the quiet trip Travis Holloway had planned became a race up a vanishing mountain. But the bag was carrying more than rescue equipment. Inside were the names, letters, and folded flags of veterans the world had almost forgotten. And before the storm was over, Travis would be forced to face the one name he had avoided for 6 years. Tell us where you're watching from, share your thoughts below, and please like and subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers and keep these stories coming. January 14th marked 6 years since Daniel Vance died. Travis Holloway did not say the date aloud that morning. He did not need to. His body remembered it before his mind fully woke. He opened his eyes at 4:17 a.m., 3 minutes before the alarm. The house outside Cheyenne was dark and still. No wind pressed against the windows. No headlights moved along the distant county road. Even the old pipes seemed to understand that silence was expected. On the kitchen counter lay an unopened envelope from Rebecca Vance. Daniel's sister sent one every year. The handwriting on the front was careful, almost gentle. Travis, inside, would be the same invitation in slightly different words. Coffee? A small gathering? Stories about Daniel? No pressure to speak. Rebecca had never accused him of abandoning the family. Her patience made the invitation harder to face. Travis turned the envelope face down. He packed coffee into a steel thermos, loaded winter gear into his old black pickup, and told the neighbor across the road that he was heading into the Bighorn Mountains for a few days. "Need some quiet," he said. The neighbor, a retired electrician who believed all emotional problems could be repaired with bacon, nodded as though Travis had announced a reasonable maintenance project. Travis did not explain that he already had quiet. He had lived inside it for 6 years. By sunrise, Cheyenne was behind him. The highway narrowed as the land climbed. Fences disappeared beneath white drifts. Bare cottonwoods gave way to lodgepole pine, and the world opened into long silver slopes beneath a pale blue sky. It was a bright winter morning, beautiful in the careless way mountains often were. Sunlight spilled over the snowfields and flashed through the trees. Every branch wore a clean white edge. Every shadow looked blue. Travis disliked how peaceful it seemed. Grief should have left damage visible from a distance. A broken ridge, a darkened sky, something honest. Instead, the mountains looked polished. He drove with one hand on the wheel. His olive combat shirt fit close beneath a charcoal winter shell, camouflage sleeves visible at the cuffs. Silver had spread farther into the hair at his temples since the year before. A week of brown and gray stubble covered his jaw. The faint scar beneath his chin tightened whenever the heater dried his skin. From the ignition hung a small brass keychain shaped like a salmon. Daniel had bought it during a fishing trip in Idaho and declared it the closest thing to seafood Travis would ever successfully catch. Travis touched the keychain once, then stopped himself. He had developed rules for surviving this date. Do not open old messages. Do not answer invitations. Do not listen to Daniel's favorite songs. Keep moving until the day becomes tomorrow. Near the southern entrance to a closed campground, he slowed. At first, the dark shape beside the road looked like a discarded coat. It lay partly covered by wind-blown snow near the wooden gate. Then one pointed ear moved. Travis braked. The pickup stopped 30 yards away. A German shepherd puppy lay against the shoulder, its black and tan body curled over an old olive-green military bag. Snow clung to its wet fur. Its front legs shook so badly that the movement traveled through its shoulders. The puppy lifted its head. One ear stood upright. The other folded near the tip. Its eyes were amber, alert despite exhaustion. Travis remained behind the wheel for several seconds. A healthy dog would have run from the truck or barked. This one did neither. It pressed lower against the bag. "All right," Travis murmured. "You've made your point." He stepped out slowly. Cold air cut through the open collar of his jacket. The mountain smelled of pine sap, metal, and fresh snow. The puppy watched every movement. Travis stopped 15 feet away and crouched. He had dealt with military working dogs overseas, animals trained to hold position under noise and pressure. This puppy had none of that polish. Its ribs showed beneath matted fur. Mud darkened its legs. The black mask across its face was uneven, broader around the right eye. Still, it held the ground. Travis returned to the truck, poured warm water into a collapsible bowl, and broke several strips of beef into small pieces. He placed both on the snow and backed away. For a long moment, the puppy did not move. Then hunger defeated caution. It crawled forward, swallowed 2 pieces without chewing, drank several hurried laps of water, and froze. The military bag was now several feet behind it. The puppy turned at once, hurried back on unsteady legs, and lowered itself across the faded canvas. Travis felt something tighten behind his ribs. Not because the dog was brave, because it looked afraid that one small act of self-preservation might cost it the only thing it still possessed. He moved closer. The puppy raised its head and placed one paw over the bag's carrying strap. A low growl came from its chest. It was weak, rough, and strangely intimate. Not a threat, a plea with teeth. Travis let his hands hang open beside him. "I'm not taking it." The puppy did not believe him. The wind shifted. Snow lifted from the road in pale ribbons. Behind the campground gate stood a small maintenance shelter, with one door hanging crooked from the frame. Travis examined the ground. Dog tracks led from the shelter toward the roadside. Beside them ran a shallow drag mark, interrupted where the bag had snagged on rocks and packed snow. He looked back at the puppy. "You pulled that out here?" The standing ear angled toward him. Inside the shelter, Travis found a thermal blanket, an empty food bowl, and a plastic water container with ice beginning to form around the rim. Someone had placed the blanket in the corner carefully. This had not been an abandonment site. The upper hinge of the door had torn loose. Wind had likely forced it open. On a shelf rested a Forest Service first aid box and a dark green rescue sling designed for carrying an injured dog. Travis was studying the torn hinge when a burst of static came from outside. He turned. The sound came again, not from his truck, from the military bag. The puppy stiffened over it. A voice broke through the static, distant and distorted. "Northridge Station calling any unit monitoring this frequency." A pause, then more interference. "East Stair Assembly has collapsed. Interior temperature is dropping. Repeat. Northridge Station calling any available unit." Travis crossed the snow quickly, but stopped when the puppy bared its teeth. "I need what's inside." The growl deepened, though the dog could barely hold its head up. Travis knelt. He placed another piece of beef near the puppy's paws, then rested 2 fingers against the zipper pull. The dog's paw remained firmly on the strap. "You keep the bag," Travis said. "I borrow the radio." The zipper opened 6 inches. Inside, he saw waterproof document sleeves, folded fabric, and a handheld VHF radio. He removed only the radio and closed the zipper again. The puppy watched him, breathing hard, but did not snap. Travis pressed the transmit button. North Ridge, this is Travis Holloway at the South Campground Gate. I have your portable radio and your dog. Static filled the channel. Then an older man answered. He isn't my dog. The voice was controlled, but each sentence came slower than the one before. Found him at the roadside rest area this morning. Thought I'd take him down to the clinic after I closed the station. Travis looked at the trembling animal. You left him in the maintenance shelter? With food, water, and my bag. He panicked whenever I moved the bag away from him. Door blew open. That would explain why I can hear wind through your microphone. The man identified himself as Walter Pike, a 74-year-old former ranger completing a seasonal inspection. He had driven a snowmobile to North Ridge to secure the shutters, retrieve maintenance logs, and shut down an aging generator before the station was permanently closed. The Weather Service had predicted the storm for evening. It had arrived early. A section of exterior railing had given way under the weight of snow, pulling the eastern staircase with it. Walter was trapped on the upper level. The fixed radio still worked on backup power, but the station's heater had failed. How cold? Travis asked. Cold enough that I've stopped pretending it's comfortable. Travis glanced toward the mountains beyond the gate. The road climbed through the trees and disappeared. He removed a satellite phone from the truck and contacted County Rescue. Nora Bell answered. Her voice was even and precise. She identified herself as the search and rescue coordinator, asked for coordinates, weather, structural condition, and Walter's symptoms without wasting a word. Travis described the collapsed stairway and repeated Walter's location. We have a team mobilizing, Nora said. Northern access is blocked by multiple fallen trees. Earliest arrival at the base is approximately 2 hours. His heat is out. I heard you. There was no false reassurance in her tone. Do not attempt a technical approach until we have assessed the structure. Can you reach him by vehicle? I don't know yet. Then find out without becoming my second problem. Travis almost smiled. Yes, ma'am. He carried the puppy to the pickup. It resisted until he lifted the military bag as well. Inside the warm cabin, Travis wrapped the dog in a wool blanket. The puppy shivered violently but kept its nose pointed toward the bag on the floor. Travis collected climbing rope, locking carabiners, a headlamp, recovery straps, and the portable winch controller. From the maintenance shelter, he took the dog rescue sling and a small Forest Service map. The radio crackled. Holloway, Walter said. I'm here. If the county team is coming, you don't need to risk the road. Walter's words had begun to drag at the edges. Travis looked toward the white road beyond the gate. I'm only going far enough to assess access. That was not a promise. Nora would have heard the difference. He placed the military bag in the pickup bed and closed the tailgate. Behind him, something struck the passenger door. The puppy had worked free of the blanket. Before Travis could stop it, the dog jumped down into the snow, stumbled to the back of the truck, and rose on its hind legs. Its front paws scraped the tailgate. Travis opened it. The puppy seized the bag's strap and pulled. It had no chance of moving the weight. Still, it leaned backward until its legs trembled, not away from the mountain. Toward it. Travis stood watching the small, stubborn animal. Somewhere above them, an old man was losing heat inside a failing tower. Somewhere behind Travis lay an unopened invitation and 6 years of practiced absence. The puppy pulled again. Travis lifted the bag. I've worked with a lot of people who didn't follow orders, he said. First time I've met one who can't get both ears up and still thinks he's running the operation. The puppy sneezed snow from its nose. Marlow, Travis decided. You look like a Marlow. He fitted the rescue sling around the dog, attached a safety line to his own belt, and secured the military bag inside the cab where Marlow could see it. Then he climbed behind the wheel. The campground gate stood locked, but the maintenance access lane beside it remained open. Travis shifted into four-wheel drive. The truck moved forward. Fresh snow swept over the road behind them almost immediately, softening the tire tracks until they looked older than they were. Travis believed he was driving up the mountain to reach one stranded man. He did not yet know that Walter Pike was guarding more than an abandoned station, and he did not know that the faded military bag beside Marlow carried a list of names the world had nearly stopped saying. The maintenance lane narrowed almost immediately. At first, the truck moved between high banks of snow where old tire grooves still showed beneath the fresh powder. Then the road bent into the trees, and those grooves disappeared. Pine branches leaned under the weight of ice, forming low white arches above the hood. Travis kept the pickup in four-wheel drive and moved slowly enough to feel each change beneath the tires. Marlow sat on the passenger side floor, wrapped in the wool blanket. The old military bag rested beside him, secured by a cargo strap. Each time the truck tilted around a curve, the puppy pressed one paw against the canvas as if steadying it. The handheld radio lay in Travis's lap. "North Ridge, position check," he said. Static answered first. Then Walter's voice came through, faint but recognizable. "Still here." That was not the question. A pause followed, longer than before. "Upper floor, west side, near the fixed radio." Travis glanced at the dashboard clock. Walter was answering correctly, but he had stopped volunteering information. That mattered. Nora Bell broke into the channel from the County Rescue Center. "Holloway, report your location." Travis read the coordinates from the satellite unit mounted near the windshield. "You are 1.8 miles past the south gate," Nora said. "Maintain vehicle access until the road becomes unstable. Do not guess." "I generally save guessing for restaurant menus." "I am serious." "So am I. I once ordered something described as rustic." There was no laugh from Nora. "Report again in 10 minutes." The channel went quiet. Travis looked at Marlow. Not everyone appreciates culture. The puppy watched him with one amber eye. The folded tip of his left ear bounced whenever the truck struck uneven snow. Through the radio, Walter spoke again. "Nora always sounds like that." "You know her?" "She once organized a search for me." Travis waited. Walter added, "I was not missing. I was avoiding a committee meeting." That story is not helping your credibility. It did not help then, either. The road climbed through a stand of lodgepole pine and opened briefly onto a white slope. Sunlight poured across the mountain in a cold, colorless sheet. Far below, the campground gate was already hidden among the trees. Travis could no longer see the tracks they had made. Ahead, the road curved sharply. A pine tree lay across it. The trunk had fallen from the uphill side, bringing down a curtain of branches. Its crown disappeared into the snowbank on the opposite shoulder. There was no room to drive around it. Travis stopped 20 feet away. Marlow stood immediately. "Stay." The puppy's body went rigid at the unfamiliar command. Travis stepped outside and examined the tree. The trunk was too thick to cut quickly with the folding saw in his truck. The slope above appeared stable, but loose snow gathered around the exposed roots. He called Nora and described the obstruction. "Can you reverse safely?" she asked. "Yes." Then reversing remains an option. So does moving the tree. Assess before committing. Travis attached a recovery line around the narrower section of trunk and connected it to the front winch. He cleared snow from beneath the cable path, checked the anchor angle, and returned to the cab. Marlow had climbed onto the passenger seat. The puppy was not looking at Travis. He was staring through the rear window toward the military bag, which Travis had moved into the truck bed to make space for his equipment. Marlow pawed at the door. It is 6 feet away. The puppy scratched again. Travis opened the door only far enough to block him with one arm. Marlow tried to push through, weak but determined. The bag is not going anywhere. Marlow's eyes remained fixed on it. Travis hesitated, then retrieved the bag and placed it behind the passenger seat. The puppy settled at once. It was such a small surrender on Travis's part that it should not have mattered. Yet it irritated him more than the fallen tree. For years, he had arranged his life around distance. He kept Daniel's photographs in a drawer, Rebecca's invitations face down, and every difficult memory far enough away that he could pretend it was not in the room. Marlow seemed to believe distance itself was the danger. Travis returned to the winch controls. The cable tightened with a low metallic hum. Snow dropped from the branches in heavy clumps. The trunk shifted several inches, stopped, then rolled just enough for the crown to drag free of the opposite bank. A branch snapped against the truck's grill. Marlow barked once. "Useful," Travis said. "A little late, but useful." He repositioned the line and pulled again. The trunk rotated toward the downhill shoulder until a narrow passage opened along the inside edge of the road. Travis walked the gap before attempting it. The snow there was packed over frozen gravel, but the uphill bank provided enough support. He guided the truck through with inches to spare. When the rear tire cleared the branches, Nora called for another position report. "You have used 23 minutes on that obstruction," she said. "I moved a tree." "You moved part of a tree. Your praise is overwhelming." Walter's speech is slowing. "I want direct checks every 5 minutes now." The humor left Travis. He keyed the radio. "Walter, tell me the color of the fixed radio." "Gray." "What is outside the western window?" "Trees." "Specific." Walter took too long. 3 pines, 1 dead at the top, a ridge beyond them. His voice had become rougher. Travis looked at the rising road. "How much farther?" "Vehicle road ends near the old pump shed. After that, trail markers." "Estimated distance?" "Little under 2 miles to the station." Walter breathed audibly into the microphone. "The road gets narrow past the next switchback." Travis drove on. The trees thickened. Snow covered the lane in a smooth, unbroken layer. He used the edges of old drainage ditches and the spacing of roadside posts to judge where the road continued. At the next switchback, the right side dropped steeply into a ravine. The left side pressed close against rock. The truck's rear wheels slipped half a foot before finding traction. Travis stopped. He got out, crouched beside the front tire, and chipped through the snow with a folding shovel. Beneath it lay a sheet of clear ice angled toward the ravine. He walked ahead 50 yards. The road narrowed further and disappeared beneath wind-packed snow. Even if the truck crossed the ice, turning it around later might be impossible. Nora listened to his report. "Vehicle movement ends there," she said. Travis looked towards the trail. "That is my assessment." "Good. I enjoy hearing those words." He parked against the uphill side, set wheel chocks, and marked the truck's position with a flashing beacon. Marlow watched from the passenger seat while Travis prepared. He put on his climbing harness, transferred the radio to his chest strap, and packed rope, locking carabiners, a compact first aid kit, headlamp, and emergency blanket. The military bag was heavier than it appeared. Its contents did not shift loosely. Everything inside had been packed with care. Travis lifted it onto one shoulder. Marlow immediately stood. "You are riding." The rescue sling supported the puppy against Travis's chest, leaving his arms free. Marlow objected for the first 30 seconds, twisting to look toward the bag behind Travis's shoulder. Only when Travis adjusted the strap so the puppy could touch the canvas with one paw did he stop struggling. They left the truck behind. The silence on foot was different from the silence inside the cab. There was no engine, no heater fan, no vibration beneath the boots. Only the creak of snow, the soft clink of climbing hardware, and Walter's intermittent voice through the radio. Red trail markers appeared on trees every 50 yards, though some were buried beneath ice. Walter transmitted short bursts at regular intervals, helping Travis hold direction whenever the path vanished. After half a mile, the ground leveled enough for Marlow to walk. Travis attached the short lead to his harness and lowered him into the snow. The puppy's legs were weak, but his behavior changed once his paws touched the trail. He sniffed the air, then the bag, then moved forward with his nose close to the ground. He was not guiding Travis to the station. The trail markers were doing that. But Marlow recognized something along the route. Walter's scent, perhaps, or the track of the snowmobile beneath the new snow. Walter transmitted again. "You still have the bag?" Travis adjusted its weight. "Yes." "And the dog?" "Currently violating several medical recommendations." "Sounds like him?" "You knew him for less than a day. Some personalities do not require extensive study." Travis stepped over a buried branch. "What is in the bag, Walter?" The radio remained quiet long enough that Travis wondered whether the signal had dropped. Then Walter answered, "It does not belong to me." "That does not answer the question." "No, it does not." Wind stirred through the treetops. Walter continued more slowly. "That bag has been carried through 2 wars, 3 funeral homes, and more rooms than I can count, where nobody knew what to do with the things left behind." Travis stopped walking. Marlow stopped with him. "What things?" "Names, mostly." The radio clicked off. Travis looked at the faded canvas against his shoulder. A dark patch near the bottom showed where snow had melted into the fabric. He thought of the waterproof sleeves he had glimpsed at the gate. Names were not heavy, not individually, but perhaps enough of them could become a burden a man carried into a storm. The trail turned uphill again. Marlow began to lag, so Travis lifted him back into the sling. The puppy protested only until one paw found the bag strap. They climbed another quarter-mile before reaching a steep traverse, where wind had stripped the upper layer of snow from the slope. Ice shone beneath a thin white covering. Travis shortened his steps. He clipped a safety line around a pine trunk and moved across sideways, testing each placement before shifting his weight. Halfway over, the snow beneath his right boot cracked. The upper layer slid. It was not a full avalanche, only a shallow slab breaking loose over ice, but it moved fast enough to knock his feet downhill. Travis dropped to one knee and caught the safety line with both hands. The military bag slipped from his shoulder. Its strap tore across his jacket. Then the bag slid down the slope. Marlow twisted in the sling. The short lead connecting his harness to Travis's belt pulled tight. The puppy's rear legs struck the snow, and for one dangerous second his body turned sideways. Then Marlow lunged toward the moving bag and closed his teeth around its carrying strap. The bag continued to slide. Marlow did not stop it through strength. He was too small and too weak. But his body, the tightened lead, and the bag formed a tangled drag against the snow. The canvas caught on a buried root. Everything held. For the moment. Travis wrapped the safety line twice around his forearm and crawled downhill. "Let go, Marlow." The puppy did not. "Let go." Marlow's jaws remained locked on the strap. Travis reached him, seized the bag handle, and pulled upward. The root shifted beneath the snow. He dragged the bag against his chest, then gathered Marlow by the harness and crawled back toward the pine. Only after all three were above the broken slab did Travis allow himself to breathe normally. He lay on his back in the snow. Marlow stood over the bag, sides heaving. "You understand," Travis said between breaths, "that canvas can be replaced." Marlow stared down at him. "Dogs cannot. There is no parts department." The puppy lowered his head and sneezed directly into Travis's face. The sound escaped Travis before he could stop it. A laugh. Not the polite breath he sometimes used when another person made a joke. Not the bitter sound that followed an unpleasant memory. A real laugh, brief and surprised. It felt disloyal. That thought arrived immediately. January 14th was not a day for laughing. Daniel was dead. The fact stood where it had always stood, unchanged by weather or distance. But the laugh had already happened. Marlow leaned against the military bag, pressing his cheek into the wet canvas. His eyes closed for a second as he breathed in. Travis watched him. The puppy did not know what the bag contained. He did not care whether the objects could be replaced. The fabric carried Walter's scent, the smell of food, dry shelter, and the first hands that had treated him gently. To Marlow, the bag was not property. It was proof that kindness had existed and might return. Travis sat up slowly. For 6 years, he had treated every reminder of Daniel as something dangerous. A photograph could open a wound. A voice message could ruin a night. A family invitation could become an accusation. Marlow pressed closer to the very thing that hurt to lose. Perhaps that was the difference between memory and pain. One asked to be carried. The other insisted on carrying the man. The radio crackled. "Holloway?" Walter sounded farther away than before. "I'm here. Dog still with you?" Travis brought the radio near Marlow. The puppy gave a tired, low whine. Silence followed on the other end. Then Walter exhaled. "That is the best thing I have heard all afternoon." Travis fitted the bag strap more securely across his chest and lifted Marlow into the sling. They continued upward. The light had changed. Clouds moved across the sun, turning the bright snow flat and gray. The wind strengthened along the ridge, erasing shallow prints within minutes. The red trail markers led them through one final stand of pines. Then the trees opened. North Ridge Station stood above them on a timber platform built against the slope. It was taller than Travis expected, a weathered wooden tower with windows wrapping the upper room. The eastern staircase was gone. Broken rails and snow-covered beams lay scattered below. The remaining section hung from the platform at an angle. The roof carried a thick load of snow. Beneath it, the narrow porch awning sagged. A dry, cracking sound moved through the wood. Travis stopped at the edge of the clearing. A figure appeared behind the upper western window. Walter Pike was tall enough to be seen from the shoulders up, though age had narrowed his frame. White hair showed beneath a burgundy knit cap. One hand rested against the glass. He lifted the other when he saw Travis. Marlow recognized him before Travis spoke. The puppy struggled in the sling and released a sharp, urgent bark. Walter pressed closer to the window. For a moment, the distance between them seemed smaller than it was. Then the awning below the station gave another long, splintering groan. Travis looked at the missing staircase, the loaded roof, and the window high above the snow. They had reached Walter. Reaching him was not the same as getting him down. The first thing Travis did was not climb. He stood at the edge of the clearing and studied the station until the urge to move became something he could control. North Ridge had been built decades earlier, when timber was cheap. Winters were assumed to be survivable, and no one yet believed every old structure needed a warning sign. The upper room sat on a raised wooden platform, its windows wrapped around 3 sides. Below it, The eastern staircase had collapsed into a field of broken rails and beams. The western wall remained mostly intact. Mostly was not a word Travis trusted. He pulled out the satellite phone, recorded a slow video of the structure, and sent it to Nora Bell. The connection failed twice before the file finally transferred. Marlow shifted in the rescue sling against his chest. The puppy could see Walter through the high window. Each time the old man moved behind the glass, Marlow strained forward. "Save your strength," Travis said. The puppy ignored him with great discipline. Nora came back over the radio. "I have Caleb Mercer here." A second voice joined the channel. Younger than Walter's, lower and tight with strain. "Travis, this is Caleb. I maintain that tower." He spoke quickly, like a man trying to make up for being somewhere else. "The western wall was reinforced 8 years ago. There is a maintenance window above the old cable housing. It opens inward. The frame should hold, but do not put weight on the awning below it." Travis looked up. The window Caleb described sat nearly 20 feet above the snowpack. Beneath it, a narrow awning projected from the wall, bowed under several feet of snow. "Should hold," Travis repeated. "The wall, yes. The awning, no." "That distinction feels important." "It is." Caleb paused. "I was supposed to be with Walter." The sentence came out flat, without excuse. Travis kept his eyes on the station. "Then help me from where you are." Nora cut in before Caleb could answer. "Walter's responses are becoming delayed. His speech remains coherent, but he is showing early hypothermia. The ground team is still clearing the northern route. Estimated arrival is 1 hour and 40 minutes. Too long. Travis had known that before she said it. Hearing the number made the decision heavier. He looked at the station again, tracing a line from the western window to a thick pine standing uphill from the structure. The tree grew outside the main slide path. Its trunk was straight, broad, and rooted behind a shelf of exposed stone. "I have a potential anchor," he said. Nora asked for measurements. Travis walked the route, probing the snow with a trekking pole. He reported distance, slope, tree diameter, and the angle of pull. Caleb confirmed where the wall studs ran and warned him about a section of rotten trim near the northwest corner. "Your civilian high-angle certification is expired," Nora said, "so I have been told. Your military training does not make the building stronger." "No, and I am not ordering you to climb." "I understand." The radio remained quiet for a moment. Then Nora said, "If you choose to approach, use 2 independent lines. Test the anchor under load before leaving the ground. Stay west of the awning fall zone. If the wall shifts, you descend immediately." Her voice was still level, but something had changed beneath it. She had moved from discouraging action to making sure it did not become reckless. Travis removed Marlow from the sling and carried him beneath a natural shelter formed by a low rock shelf and overhanging pine branches. He clipped the puppy's harness to a short tether secured around a buried trunk. The military bag rested beside him. Marlow placed one paw over its strap. "You stay here," Travis said. The puppy looked toward Walter. "I know." Travis added a folded emergency blanket beneath him and used the open side of the rescue sling as a windbreak. The position offered a clear view of the western wall, while keeping Marlow outside the likely path of falling snow. Then Travis prepared the ropes. He wrapped the primary anchor around the pine using a wide, protective sling, added a separate backup around the trunk, and checked every locking carabiner twice. He pulled the system under his full weight, first low, then at the expected direction of load. Nora made him repeat the checks aloud. Caleb listened. Walter transmitted from inside the tower. "You people always this talkative?" Travis looked up at the window. We are discussing your lack of planning. I planned. You planned for weather that did not arrive. That sounds less like a planning problem and more like weather misconduct. Walter's humor was still there, but thinner now. Travis tightened his gloves. Stay near the west wall. Keep moving your fingers. Do not stand unless I tell you. I used to give those instructions. Today is full of disappointment. Marlow released one sharp bark. Walter's face appeared behind the window again. There he is, Walter said. The old man lifted a hand against the glass. Marlow leaned into the tether, his tail moving once. The sight lasted only a second, but it changed the clearing. Walter was no longer a voice inside a structure. Marlow was no longer simply a puppy at Travis's feet. There was a line between them, invisible but strong enough to pull both toward the same place. Travis clipped into the ropes. He began climbing the western wall, using the exposed braces and structural seams Caleb identified. His boots found purchase on narrow ledges of packed ice. He moved slowly, keeping most of his weight on the rope system rather than the building. Wind struck the tower from the north and curled around the wall. Halfway up, it shoved him sideways. His shoulder hit the timber hard enough to drive the breath from his lungs. He stayed still, boots braced, one gloved hand locked around the rope. The wall creaked. Status, Nora said. Still attached. That was not the question. Shoulder impact. No loss of function. Wall movement? Minimal. Below, Marlow barked once. Travis looked down. The puppy was not facing him. He was staring at the roof line. A sheet of snow shifted above the western window. Travis flattened himself against the wall as the snow broke loose and swept past. It struck the lower braces in a white cloud, missing him by several feet. Caleb, Travis said, is there a second accumulation point above the northwest corner? Yes, roof pitch creates a drift pocket there. That would have been useful earlier. I did not know how far west you were. Nora's voice sharpened. Both of you focus. Travis continued. His gloves had collected ice. The rope felt slick beneath his fingers. Sensation in the tips of his left hand was beginning to dull, though he could still close his grip. He stopped beneath the maintenance window. The wooden frame looked solid, but the latch inside had frozen shut. He cleared snow from the lower edge and tried the frame. Nothing. Walter's face appeared inches away on the other side. Up close, the old man looked worse. His skin had gone pale beneath a weathered network of wrinkles. White hair escaped from beneath his burgundy cap. His shoulders shook under a forest green ranger coat layered over 2 sweaters. You look younger over the radio, Travis said. Walter blinked slowly. You look less annoying from a distance. Good. Still oriented. Travis drew a compact pry tool from his belt and worked it beneath the latch plate. The wood resisted, then split with a dry crack. The window opened inward. Warmth did not come out, only stale air and the smell of old timber, machine oil, and cold metal. Travis climbed inside. The upper room was smaller than it appeared from below. A fixed VHF radio sat on a desk beside a fading battery indicator. Charts, maintenance logs, and an old enamel mug covered the walls and shelves. Walter sat against the desk, wrapped in a silver emergency blanket. On a nearby shelf rested a long metal box inside a waterproof cover. Travis knelt and checked Walter's responsiveness, pulse, and coordination. The old man could answer questions, but his hands shook too badly to manage the buckles Travis placed before him. You are leaving through the window, Travis said. Walter glanced towards the broken eastern side. I had gathered that. I will lower you in a rescue harness. You will keep your arms close and follow commands. Still accustomed to giving those. You can return to your preferred role on the ground. Travis secured the harness around Walter's chest and thighs, checking that it would distribute pressure safely. Then he pointed to the metal box. "That stays." Walter's eyes moved to it. "No." "It adds weight." "It comes." Travis did not raise his voice. "What is inside?" Walter looked at the box for a long moment. "One man who has waited 40 years. The tower groaned under another gust. Travis understood none of the answer, but he recognized the tone. There were objects people owned, and there were objects that owned part of the person carrying them. He lifted the box. "Then he goes first." Travis sealed it inside the waterproof cover, clipped it to a separate line, and lowered it away from the awning. Nora confirmed when it reached the ground. Marlow immediately moved toward it, but stopped at the limit of his tether, still keeping one paw on the military bag. Travis turned back to Walter. "You are next." They moved to the window. Travis transferred Walter's weight gradually onto the lowering system. The old man gripped the frame until his knuckles whitened. "Walter." The ranger looked at him. "Let go." For a second, the command seemed larger than the window. Then Walter released the frame. Travis guided him out. The wind caught Walter's coat, but the harness held him upright. Nora counted the descent over the radio, while Travis fed rope through the system. 10 feet, 8, 6. A deep, splitting sound came from beneath them. The awning sagged. "Move west," Caleb said urgently. "Get clear of the wall." Walter was still 4 feet above the ground. Travis increased the descent speed without dropping control. Walter's boots touched snow. He stumbled, rolled toward the rock shelf, and pulled himself behind it. The awning collapsed. Timber, ice, and packed snow crashed into the exact space below the window. The impact shook the western wall. Travis swung hard against the frame and lost the radio from his shoulder clip. For several seconds, the channel carried only noise. Nora called his name. No answer. Travis held the rope with one hand and waited for the wall to stop vibrating. Below, Marlow barked repeatedly now, no longer restrained by caution. Travis retrieved the radio where it hung from its safety cord. "I'm here." Nora exhaled once. Then she said, with frightening calm, "When this is over, I am going to explain at length why silence after structural collapse is discouraged." "Understood. You are not allowed to sound amused." "I am not." "You are." Travis descended the line. When his boots touched the snow, Marlow nearly pulled the tether free. Travis released him. The puppy ran past Travis and threw himself against Walter's chest. Walter had managed to sit upright beneath the rock shelf. He caught Marlow with both arms, buried his face briefly in the wet fur, and let out a sound that was half laugh, half apology. I told you to stay in the shelter," he whispered. Marlow climbed higher, licking snow from Walter's mustache. Then the puppy turned, hurried back to the military bag, and placed one paw on it. Walter watched him. "He has been doing that all day?" "All day." "Good. What is good about it?" Walter did not answer. Evening had begun to settle across the ridge. The snow was no longer bright. Blue shadows filled the spaces beneath the trees, and new flakes moved sideways through the clearing. The route back to the truck had nearly vanished. Nora gave them directions to an emergency ranger cabin less than half a mile southwest. It was stocked for winter closures and marked on Caleb's map. Walter could walk, but not steadily. Travis supported him with one arm while carrying the metal box and military bag with the other. Marlow remained attached to Travis's belt and moved close to Walter's boots. The cabin appeared between the trees as a dark square beneath a steep roof. Inside, they found split firewood, a cast-iron stove, dry clothing sealed in plastic, and a small backup generator. Travis started the fire, changed Walter into dry layers, and warmed him slowly with blankets and sweetened water. Marlow settled between the two men. He kept one paw touching the military bag. By dusk, the windows had turned blue with reflected snow. The wind pushed softly against the roof, no longer sounding like an enemy, only weather moving through the mountains. Walter sat near the stove, wrapped in a plaid blanket. Color had begun to return to his face. He looked at the bag, then at Travis. "You asked what was inside." Walter opened the zipper. There were no weapons, no money, no classified papers. Inside lay folded American flags, old photographs, military identification cards, handwritten letters, and a thick ledger bound in faded blue cloth. Every item had been sealed inside a waterproof sleeve. Each carried a transfer form, a date, and a name. Walter removed the first photograph. It showed a young man in uniform, smiling beside an aging pickup. "Harold Jensen," Walter said. "He repaired radios after he came home. Never charged widows." He placed the photograph near the stove, safely away from the heat. Then he removed another. Louis Arnett, hated carrots, grew them every year because his wife liked them. One by one, the names entered the cabin. Not as ranks, not as casualties, as people. Marlow rested his chin on the bag while Walter spoke. Travis listened as the fire settled lower and the blue evening deepened outside. The old military bag did not contain a secret. It contained lives the world had nearly finished forgetting. The fire had settled into a steady red glow. Outside, wind moved through the pines in long, low breaths. Snow brushed against the cabin windows, soft enough now to sound almost polite. The emergency generator hummed from the shed behind the cabin, giving the room one weak overhead light and enough power for the radio charger. Walter sat near the stove with a plaid blanket around his shoulders. His ranger coat hung from a peg beside Travis's wet shell. The old man wore a cream thermal shirt and a brown-green cardigan from the cabin's emergency supplies, both slightly too large for him. Marlow lay on the floor between the two men. His body was curled toward the heat, but one front paw rested against the military bag. Walter had removed 6 folders and arranged them on the table. Each was sealed in a clear waterproof sleeve. Names appeared in black ink across the labels, followed by dates, service branches, and small identification numbers. Travis had expected the contents to feel ceremonial. Instead, they looked administrative. Forms, photocopies, receipts, handwritten notes, a faded photograph attached to a transfer record with a paperclip. That plainness made them more difficult to dismiss. Walter turned over a document. "Judith would be furious if she saw me laying these this close to a wood stove." Judith Crane, runs the County Veterans Chapter as if Congress personally asked her to prevent civilization from collapsing. Walter's mouth shifted beneath his white mustache. "She has a black briefcase, 3 kinds of pens, and no tolerance for memory being used as legal documentation. Sounds useful. She is unbearable. You sound fond of her. I contain multitudes." Walter lifted a folder marked Harold Jensen. "His niece gave us the photograph. The service record came through the chapter. Funeral home released the personal effects after the legal holding period, with written authorization." Travis looked at the transfer form. So none of this was collected informally. Judith would prefer the phrase lawfully documented and annoyingly indexed. Walter explained how the work had begun 17 years earlier. A funeral director called the Veterans Chapter about a folded flag that had never been collected. The man it belonged to had outlived his wife, his only brother, and most of the people who knew him before his hair turned white. Judith located a distant cousin. The cousin did not want the flag, but asked whether someone could make sure the man was remembered. Walter did. He carried the flag to a quiet trail on the lower mountain, read the man's name, and placed a small engraved stone beside the path. After that came another, then 3 more. Some families donated copies of letters and photographs. Others gave original items they could no longer store, but could not bear to throw away. A few funeral homes contacted Judith when veterans died without immediate family. No flag changed hands without records. No item entered the bag without a name, a source, and a date. "The unclaimed flags still belong to the chapter," Walter said. "I'm only their courier." "You make a poor courier." "How so?" "You carry too much." Walter glanced at the bag. "That is generally what couriers do." Travis shook his head. "No. You carry what belongs to everyone else as though returning without it would be a moral failure." The old man did not answer at once. He picked up another photograph. A broad-faced woman in an army uniform stood beside a rusted station wagon, laughing at whoever held the camera. "Marion Bell," Walter said. "Not related to Nora? Worked 32 years in a grocery store after leaving the service. She remembered every customer's birthday and forgot her own twice." He placed the photograph back into its sleeve. "The stone, not headstones," Walter continued. "No remains are there, just names, dates, and whatever detail we can verify." The memorial path had begun on privately owned land belonging to the family of a deceased veteran. The family had granted written permission for the stones and allowed Walter to maintain the trail, but the owner died the previous spring. The heirs sold the parcel to the county as part of a fire management corridor. The lower slope would also be used to reroute a winter recreation trail away from avalanche-prone ground. The land had changed hands. So had the rules. Now the memorial required documented consent, safe access, maintenance responsibility, and verification that the personal stories displayed beside the stones were accurate. "County is not trying to erase it," Walter said before Travis could ask. "They gave us until spring. That is more patience than some offices would offer." "Then what is the problem?" Walter looked toward the dark window. "The problem is spring." His voice had lost its humor. "There are 43 stones. Judith has complete records for 21. Partial records for 12. The rest are scraps, old addresses, disconnected phone numbers, and stories I was told by people who are now dead themselves. And you think you can fix all of that alone? I think I began it." "That is not the same thing." Walter folded his hands in his lap. They were steadier now, though the fingers still carried a slight tremor. "If the records are not completed, the stones will be removed and stored. Not destroyed. Stored." He said the last word as if it described a second burial. Travis leaned back in the wooden chair. "Maybe that is what needs to happen." Walter turned his head. "You heard me." "I did. No one person can keep every name alive. You have turned yourself into a man carrying a cemetery on his back." The old ranger's expression hardened. "It is not a cemetery." "You know what I mean." "No, I know what people mean when they say something like that." Walter's eyes, light brown and usually softened by humor, grew sharp. "They mean the weight is inconvenient. They mean responsibility should be divided until no one feels responsible. They mean someone else will remember." "That is not what I said. It is where the sentence goes." Travis felt irritation rise faster than he expected. "You nearly froze inside a tower because you were carrying files to a trail that may not legally remain open." "I went to close the station." "With the bag?" "Yes. In a storm. The storm arrived early." "You still went alone?" Walter's jaw tightened. "And you drove into it?" "I was responding to a trapped man. On the anniversary of someone you refused to visit." The words landed cleanly. Marlow lifted his head. Travis went still. The fire made a small popping sound. Walter looked at him without triumph. That made it worse. "You knew?" Travis asked. "I knew you did not drive into these mountains for recreation. That does not mean you know why." "No." Walter adjusted the blanket around his shoulders. "But people escaping something often choose places where nobody can ask questions." Travis looked away. For a moment, the cabin felt too small. The table, the fire, the old bag, and Walter's quiet attention crowded the air. Marlow rose from the floor. He moved away from Walter and crossed to Travis. The puppy pressed his shoulder against Travis's left shin, then rested his head on Travis's knee. Not because he understood grief, because Travis's breathing had changed. Travis placed one hand on the dog's neck. His fingers found the small ridge of fur beneath Marlow's folded ear. Walter did not speak. The silence gave Travis room to refuse. Instead, he said, "His name was Daniel Vance." It was the first time he had spoken Daniel's full name that day. The room did not change. No window cracked. No mountain answered. Walter simply waited. "Daniel and I served together," Travis continued. "Long enough that people assumed we were brothers. He was louder than I was. Better with people. Worse with maps. That is a dangerous flaw." He compensated with confidence. Walter nodded gravely. "A common military instrument?" Travis almost smiled, but the feeling passed. 6 years ago, he called me late at night. I saw the phone light up. I was tired. I had been traveling. I thought I would call him in the morning. He looked at the brass salmon keychain hanging from the belt loop of his folded trousers near the stove. He died before morning. Walter's expression changed, but he did not interrupt. "Brain aneurysm," Travis said. "Sudden. The doctor said there was nothing anyone could have done." "And you believe the doctors?" "Yes. But not yourself." Travis's hand tightened slightly in Marlow's fur. "The call was not an emergency. Rebecca told me later he wanted to ask whether I could go fishing that weekend." "Could you?" "I had already canceled on him twice that month." Walter looked toward the fire. Travis continued, the words coming more slowly now. "There was always a reason. Work, travel, repairs at the house. I thought there would be another weekend, another dinner, another call." Marlow shifted closer. "I know answering would not have saved him," Travis said. "That is not the point." "What is?" "The point is that I kept treating time like something we had stored away." Walter leaned back. He did not tell Travis to forgive himself. He did not say Daniel would understand. Instead, he said, "That is a different kind of debt." Travis looked at him. Walter reached for the long metal box they had carried from the station. The box was dented at one corner and wrapped inside a waterproof sleeve. Walter opened the outer covering but stopped before lifting the lid. "This is why the bag was with me today," he said. Travis glanced at the folders on the table. "I thought the memorial records were why." "They were the reason I could explain." Walter opened the box. Inside lay a folded American flag protected by blue cloth. Beneath it rested an envelope, yellowed at the edges. Across the front, in faded handwriting, were 2 words: Walter Pike. The old man touched the envelope but did not pick it up. "My brother's name was Samuel." The fire cracked again. Walter and Samuel had both served, though not in the same unit. They returned home within 2 years of each other and eventually came back to Wyoming to help care for their father. Their father's health declined slowly. Walter believed Samuel avoided the difficult work. Samuel believed Walter used responsibility as a weapon. One argument began over medication schedules and ended with accusations neither man had intended to say aloud. Samuel left. Months became years. Their father died. The brothers exchanged no words at the funeral beyond what politeness required. After that, silence hardened into a structure neither knew how to dismantle. "Nearly 40 years, Walter said. Travis stared at the unopened envelope. "When did Samuel die?" 8 years ago. "And you have carried this since then?" Walter nodded. Margaret Sloan handled his estate. She found the letter in a file box. My old address was written on the front. She tracked me down and sent the letter with his burial flag. "You never opened it?" "No." "But you carried it to the memorial?" "Several times." "And read everyone else's names?" Walter's eyes remained on the envelope. "Yes." The contradiction was so precise that it required no accusation. Walter had built a life around preventing strangers from disappearing, yet the one name closest to his own had remained sealed in metal. Travis looked at the old man across from him and felt the argument between them rearrange itself. Walter was not protecting the memorial only because other people needed it. He needed it because their names were safer than Samuel's. Their regrets did not know him personally. Their letters could not answer back. "You are not afraid the letter blames you," Travis said. Walter's mouth moved, but no words came. "You are afraid it does not." The old ranger's face folded slightly around the eyes. "If Samuel forgave me," he said at last, "then I lost 40 years for nothing. And if he did not, then I lost them for a reason." Neither possibility offered mercy. The wind pressed briefly against the cabin. On the floor, Marlow left Travis and walked back to the military bag. He settled beside it, placing his chin on the strap. The two men watched him. Walter gave a tired breath that might once have become a laugh. "He has more confidence in that bag than I do. He does not know what is inside. Perhaps that helps." Travis looked at the envelope again. He thought about Rebecca's invitation face down on his kitchen counter. Walter thought about a letter sealed for 8 years. Both men had survived circumstances that demanded action without certainty. Yet here, beside a quiet fire, neither seemed brave enough to open paper. Walter closed the metal box. Not because the moment had passed, because he had finally admitted the moment existed. Across the table lay 43 names in plastic sleeves. Inside the box lay one more. And for the first time that night, Travis understood that Walter Pike wasn't only trying to save people from being forgotten. He had been hiding among them. Morning arrived without drama. No violent wind shook the cabin. No new emergency crackled over the radio. Pale sunlight entered through the frosted window and spread across the wooden floor in narrow gold bars. Outside, the storm had moved east. Snow remained deep among the pines, but the sky above the ridge had cleared into a bright winter blue. Every branch carried a white edge. Ice crystals glittered in the sunlight and made the forest look newly built. Travis woke in the chair beside the stove. His neck hurt. His left knee had stiffened overnight. Marlow slept against his boot, one oversized paw resting on the military bag. Walter was already awake. The old ranger sat at the table wearing the brown-green cardigan from the emergency supplies. His burgundy cap rested beside him. Without it, his white hair looked thinner and more disordered, as though the night had aged him several additional years. The metal box remained closed near his elbow. The envelope was still inside. Walter drank from an enamel cup and watched the snow through the window. "You sleep loudly," he said. "I do not." Marlow disagrees. The puppy opened one eye, then closed it again. Travis stood carefully and tested his knee. The radio came alive with Nora Bell's voice. "Cabin team report," Travis answered. Nora informed them that the rescue crew had cleared a lower approach from the southwest. Snowmobiles could reach the old Memorial Junction within 90 minutes, but the upper route to North Ridge remained unsafe. Walter should limit exertion, Nora said. Short distance only. Keep him warm and monitor coordination. Walter leaned towards the radio. I am standing within hearing range. I was hoping that might improve compliance. It rarely has. Nora ignored him. The pickup point is at the Memorial Junction. Do not return to the tower. Do not attempt the Eastern Road. Travis unfolded Caleb's map across their table. The shortest route from the cabin to the junction passed near the Memorial Trail. Walter saw where his finger rested. No. Travis looked up. We have not discussed anything yet. We are going directly to the pickup point. The memorial is less than 300 yards off the marked route. It is snowed in. So is everything. My condition is not ideal. That is the first sensible thing you have said since yesterday. Walter tightened his mouth. The county may remove the stones in spring. There is no reason to make a detour today. Travis studied him. Each statement was practical. Together they formed a wall. Weather, health, time, land rules, all true. Travis had used equally respectable reasons for 6 years. Work was demanding. The drive to Rebecca's house was long. He did not want to intrude. Daniel's family deserved privacy. Next year would be easier. Avoidance rarely announced itself as fear. It arrived dressed as good judgment. Travis folded the map. We will follow the safe route, he said. Walter relaxed slightly. And when that route reaches the Memorial Junction, you can decide whether you are physically able to walk 300 yards. I have already decided. No. You have prepared an argument. Marlow rose, stretched, and shook his coat. His folded left ear flapped once before returning to its crooked position. Walter looked away. They ate oatmeal from the cabin's emergency stores. Travis repacked the documents into their waterproof sleeves and placed them inside the military bag. The metal box went in last. Walter watched the zipper close. He did not touch it. When they stepped outside, the brightness forced all three to pause. The world after the storm seemed almost offensively clean. The wind had softened. Powder drifted from high branches in sparkling curtains. Their breath appeared in slow clouds. Travis carried most of the gear. Walter used the ashwood walking stick stored in the cabin. Marlow wore the rescue harness and remained attached to Travis by a short lead. The lower trail descended gently through the forest. Blue markers tied to tree trunks showed the route toward the pickup point. Walter moved more steadily than the night before, but Travis noticed the care in every step. The old man favored his right side and stopped more often than pride would have preferred. Neither mentioned Samuel. After 20 minutes, they reached a fork. The blue markers continued downhill. A narrower path curved left between the pines. Almost no sign marked it except a weathered wooden post partly buried in snow. Walter stopped. Marlow lowered his nose to the ground. He sniffed the edge of the path, moved several feet left, and pulled lightly against the lead. Travis did not claim the dog knew where the memorial stood. Marlow recognized Walter's old tracks beneath the new snow, perhaps, or the scent of wool, leather, and metal left from earlier visits. The puppy pulled again. Walter stared at the path. He followed my snowmobile scent yesterday, he said. Maybe. He does not know what is down there. No. Marlow turned and looked back at them. Walter gave a quiet, humorless laugh. Useful creature. Never understands enough to make excuses. He took one step toward the memorial trail, then another. Travis did not praise him. Some decisions became smaller when witnessed too loudly. The path descended through widely spaced pines. Sunlight reached the ground in bright patches. Beneath the snow, The trail curved along a low hillside, protected from the worst of the wind. The first stone appeared near the base of a tree. Only its upper edge showed. Walter stopped and brushed away the snow with his glove. A name emerged. Harold Jensen. Below it, a smaller line read, "Fixed what others threw away." Walter smiled faintly. He repaired radios for half the county. If a widow brought him one, he would refuse payment and complain that she had interrupted his lunch. They walked on. Another stone stood several yards farther. Louis Arnett grew carrots for the woman he loved. He despised carrots, Walter said. His wife liked them. He planted enough every year to feed an infantry company. The next belonged to Marion Bell. Beneath her name, remembered every birthday except her own. The memorial was not grand. There was no flagpole, arch, or bronze statue. The stones were modest, set along the trail where snow, rain, and pine needles could touch them. Some inscriptions had faded. Others leaned slightly after years of freezing ground. Yet the place did not feel abandoned. It felt paused, as if the people named there had been waiting quietly for footsteps. Walter moved from stone to stone, clearing snow with his gloves. His stories stayed small. A mechanic who sang opera badly, a nurse who carried peppermints for frightened patients, a truck driver who mailed handwritten birthday cards to his sister for 48 straight years. Travis began to understand why Walter resisted files that reduced them to service dates. The ordinary details were not decorations. They were the part that proved these people had lived beyond their uniforms. Near the end of the path, Walter slowed. A clearing opened between 3 tall pines. 42 stones formed a loose curve around its edge. One space remained empty. Walter stood before it. Marlow sat beside the military bag, looking from Walter to Travis. No one spoke. Walter removed the metal box. His hands were steady while he lifted out Samuel's folded flag. They began to shake only when he reached for the envelope. He placed the flag on a dry blanket Travis spread over the snow. The envelope looked fragile in the bright light. Walter held it for almost a minute. "I could take it back," he said. "Yes." "I could open it at home." "Yes." "I could ask Margaret what it says." "You could." Walter looked at him sharply. "You are not very helpful. You are not asking for help. You are asking for permission to leave." Walter lowered his gaze. Travis softened his voice. "The letter is not a verdict. You do not know that." "No. It may contain things I cannot answer." "It probably does." "It cannot give us back 40 years." "No." Walter's thumb moved along the sealed edge. Travis looked at the blank space in the snow. "Whatever is inside cannot repair the years," he said. "It also cannot make them more lost than they already are." Walter closed his eyes. Then he opened the envelope. The paper inside consisted of 3 handwritten pages. Samuel's script leaned heavily to the right. Some words had been crossed out. One paragraph had been restarted in the margin. Walter read silently at first. His expression changed not once but many times. Defense, disbelief, anger, recognition. At last he began reading portions aloud. Samuel wrote that he still believed Walter had judged him unfairly during their father's illness. He admitted that he had avoided responsibility, but accused Walter of making every act of care into proof of moral superiority. Walter stopped. That sounds like him. He almost smiled. Samuel wrote that both brothers had said things meant to wound, then spent decades behaving as if silence had made them principled. He confessed to writing several earlier letters and destroying them. He did not know whether forgiveness was possible. He did not know whether Walter wanted it. But he no longer wanted anger to be the only surviving evidence of their relationship. Walter's voice weakened when he reached the final page. Samuel remembered the room they had shared as boys. In winter, ice formed inside the windows. Their old dog, Button, slept between their beds because neither brother wanted to admit he was afraid of the dark. They took turns feeding her, though each accused the other of doing it wrong. Before they became two men who needed to win, Samuel wrote, they had once loved one another without keeping score. Walter lowered the paper. The final lines remained. He read them quietly. If you are still angry, then be angry. Just do not pretend we were never brothers. The forest remained bright and indifferent. Walter bowed his head. His tears did not arrive dramatically. They slipped into his mustache and fell onto the letter in slow drops. He turned away as though embarrassed, then seemed to remember there was no dignity left to defend from either man. I was still angry, he said. Travis stood nearby. So was he. I wanted him to admit I was right. He admitted part of it, not enough. No. Walter let out a broken laugh. He always stopped one sentence too early. Marlow stepped closer to the bag and placed one paw on the strap. A loose clump of snow dropped from a branch above and landed across his muzzle. The puppy sneezed violently. Walter looked down. For 1 second, grief held. Then his mouth opened in an unwilling laugh. Travis laughed too. Marlow sneezed again and shook snow over both men. The moment did not become less sacred. It became human. Walter folded the letter along its original creases and returned it to the envelope. From the military bag, he removed a small engraved stone. Samuel Pike. Below the name were the words, brother, soldier, and terrible harmonica player. Travis raised an eyebrow. He was very bad, Walter said. You engraved that before reading the letter? I never doubted the harmonica. Together they cleared the empty space. Walter placed Samuel's stone into the snow-softened ground and set the folded flag beside it for several quiet minutes before returning it to its protective cloth. No speech followed, no salute was required. Walter simply said his brother's name aloud. Samuel Pike. The name moved into the trees and disappeared without vanishing. Travis opened the military bag. Inside lay a smooth, blank stone Walter had packed as a replacement marker. Travis lifted it. He imagined Daniel's name across the surface. He imagined telling the truth about the missed call. His hand would not move toward the engraving tool. Walter did not ask him to try. Travis carried the blank stone to the space beside Samuel and set it there without a name. It looked unfinished. That was honest. Marlow sniffed it, then sat between the two stones. In the distance, snowmobile engines approached through the trees. Nora Bell arrived first, wearing a slate-blue shell beneath a brick-red rescue vest. Her short auburn hair was hidden beneath a gray knit cap, and a yellow marker protruded from her shoulder pocket, as though even the mountain might require labeling. She dismounted and examined Walter before offering any greeting. Pupils, coordination, skin temperature, speech. Only after deciding he remained stable did she turn to Travis. I have prepared several remarks concerning unauthorized technical rescue. I look forward to them. You will receive them after you are warm enough to stop pretending cold affects your hearing. Behind her, Caleb Mercer climbed off the second snowmobile. He was broad through the shoulders, with dark, curling hair beneath a navy cap, and a carpenter's pencil still tucked behind one ear. He crossed directly to Walter. I should have been there. Walter shook his head. You were where your mother needed you. I still should have. No. Walter's voice was gentle but final. Do not build a home inside one decision, Caleb. It is poorly insulated. Caleb looked at him, then nodded. The military bag rested on Walter's lap during the ride down. Marlow sat between Walter and Travis, wrapped in a gray rescue blanket with his head exposed. For the first time since Travis had found him, Walter did not grip the bag with both hands. One hand rested loosely on the canvas. The other remained on Marlow's head. Behind them, sunlight spread across the memorial trail. Samuel's stone stood beside an unnamed one, both partly surrounded by snow. One belonged to a man finally spoken of. The other waited for someone who had not yet learned how. Walter Pike spent one night at the county hospital. The doctors called it mild hypothermia, which sounded harmless until a nurse explained that mild meant his body had begun losing the argument with the cold, but had not yet lost badly enough to damage his heart or brain. Walter accepted the diagnosis with poor grace. He objected to the hospital gown, the blood pressure cuff, and the rule forbidding him from walking to the bathroom without assistance. When Travis visited the following morning, Walter was sitting upright in bed, wearing reading glasses and correcting the spelling on his discharge papers. They wrote "Retired Forest Ranger," Walter said. "You are a retired forest ranger." "I was also an Army communications specialist." "The hospital is treating your temperature, not writing your biography." That attitude is how history deteriorates. Across town, Marlow received a less argumentative examination. The veterinary clinic found no microchip. The puppy was dehydrated and underweight, with cracked pads and an irritated stomach from inconsistent feeding. Nothing was broken. There was no frostbite. His heart and lungs were strong. "He has been surviving on stubbornness," the veterinarian told Travis. "That appears to be his primary food group." The clinic notified County Animal Control and posted the required found dog notice. Walter signed a statement confirming that he had discovered Marlow near the roadside rest area and had never claimed ownership. Until the legal holding period ended, Travis could not adopt him. He could, however, become an approved foster. 3 days later, Marlow entered Travis's house wearing a rust-orange nylon collar, carrying a bag of prescription food, and regarding every doorway as though it might lead back into the storm. Travis placed a padded dog bed beside the living room fireplace. Marlow ignored it. He paced through the house, nails clicking awkwardly across the hardwood floors. Twice he lost traction and slid into furniture. The second collision startled him so badly that he retreated beneath the kitchen table. Travis sat on the floor several feet away. He did not call the puppy. He did not reach beneath the table. He opened the military bag, removed the empty waterproof sleeves Walter had allowed him to keep temporarily, and placed the canvas beside the dog bed. Marlow emerged within a minute. He circled the bag, sniffed every seam, and finally lay down with his chest pressed against it. The important documents remained locked in Walter's fireproof cabinet. The empty bag was enough. At night, Travis moved it beside Marlow's bed. If the canvas was outside his line of sight, the puppy whimpered and searched the room. If it remained nearby, he slept. By the end of the first week, Marlow had learned that the refrigerator contained food, the bathroom mirror contained a suspicious dog who copied him, and Travis stored beef strips in the upper cabinet beside the coffee. By the second week, he had learned how to climb onto the sofa without permission. By the third, he had discovered the most effective method of waking Travis before dawn: a cold nose against the side of the neck. Travis woke with such force the first time that he nearly fell out of bed. Marlow stepped backward, pleased with the result. "You're becoming difficult to defend," Travis told him. The puppy's left ear remained folded at the tip, giving his serious expression a permanent flaw in authority. No owner came forward. No matching report appeared in neighboring counties. No photograph, veterinary record, or shelter listing connected Marlow to another home. When the legal holding period ended, Travis signed the adoption papers. The animal control clerk asked whether he wanted to keep the name. Travis looked down at Marlow, who was chewing the corner of the office mat. "He already ignores it professionally," Travis said. "Changing it now would damage morale." Marlow Holloway became official. The memorial was more complicated. 2 weeks after Walter returned home, the county mailed a formal notice to the Veterans Chapter. The existing stones could remain temporarily, but the group needed to submit verified identities, consent records where applicable, a maintenance agreement, and a safety plan before spring. Travis read the letter twice. Then he called Walter and suggested contacting newspapers. "A rescued ranger, a Navy SEAL, a starving dog, and forgotten veterans," Travis said. "They will print it." Judith Crane answered from the other end of the conference table before Walter could respond. "No." It was the first word she had spoken to Travis in person. Judith was 63, broad-shouldered and impeccably composed, with cropped silver hair and rectangular black glasses. She wore a navy blazer over a pale shirt and carried a black leather case that appeared capable of surviving both flood and litigation. She opened the case and removed 3 organized stacks of folders. "Sympathy can fill a room for an afternoon," she said. "It cannot establish ownership, verify a service record, or maintain a trail." Walter sat beside her in an olive utility vest, looking like a man who had endured this lecture in several forms over many years. "Judith dislikes newspapers," he explained. "I dislike emergencies created by applause." Travis leaned back. "The county may remove the stones. The county has given us a process to prevent removal. And if the process is impossible, then we prove that with records, not adjectives." Judith slid 1 stack toward him. 21 memorial files were nearly complete. 12 required additional documentation. 10 consisted of partial names, copies of photographs, old addresses, and Walter's handwritten recollections. Some entries had been assembled before digital databases became widely accessible. Others depended on conversations with people who had since died. Walter tapped one folder. "I know who he was." Judith did not look at him. "You know what someone told you." "That person served with him. That person called him Eddie. The service records list no Edward matching the unit and dates. Nicknames exist. So do mistakes." The argument was not new. Its edges had been worn smooth from repetition. Elaine Foster entered carrying a canvas satchel and a portable scanner. She was small, silver-haired, and quick in her movements. Her smoky gray hair was twisted into a low knot, held by a dark wooden clip. Round metal glasses sat low on her nose, and she looked at the folder stacks with more warmth than she offered any person in the room. Elaine managed the county historical library. Her late husband had served as a military pilot, but she did not present that fact as a qualification. "My qualification," she told Walter, "is that I know the difference between a memory, a source, and a story someone has repeated until it feels like a source." Walter frowned. "You and Judith must be very happy together." "We are when the records are alphabetized." The work began slowly. Elaine created a verification sheet for each person. Full legal name, service branch, unit, dates, source of personal items, known relatives, and documented consent for public display. Walter disliked the boxes. "They make lives look small." Elaine removed her glasses. Travis noticed this was what she did before saying something unpleasant. "Incorrect information makes lives smaller." She opened the file of a man Walter had always described as a former Air Force pilot. The service record showed that he had been an aircraft mechanic. Walter stared at the page. "He told everyone he flew." "He may have worked on flight crews," Elaine said, "or he may have enjoyed the version better. He repaired aircraft through 2 deployments. That is not a lesser life." Walter closed the folder. The correction wounded him more than Travis expected. The next discrepancy was worse. One memorial described a veteran as having died entirely alone. Elaine found an obituary naming a cousin in Idaho who had attended the burial but never knew the memorial existed. Another file used the name Red Mallory. No legal record matched it. After days of searching, Judith found that Red had been a nickname for Thomas Allen Mercer, misspelled on the original handwritten note. Walter began speaking less during the meetings. One afternoon, he stood abruptly and gathered his coat. "I should step away." Judith looked up. "From today's meeting?" "From the project." The room went still. Walter stared at the shelves rather than the people. If the stories are wrong, perhaps someone more qualified should finish them. Elaine did not reassure him. Judith did not argue. Travis watched the old man reach for his walking stick. "You remembered enough to keep looking," Travis said. Walter stopped. "That is not the same as remembering correctly." "No." Travis closed the file in front of him. "You were wrong about a job title. You were wrong about a cousin. You were handed a nickname and treated it as a legal name." Walter's jaw tightened. "This is not helping. You want it to be betrayal because betrayal would give you permission to quit." Walter looked at him. Travis continued. "Admitting you remembered something wrong does not erase the person. It is how you stop replacing him with the version most convenient to you." Elaine's expression shifted slightly. It was the first time she looked at Travis as though he had said something useful. Walter lowered himself back into the chair. The rehook came not from a dramatic discovery, but from a telephone call 2 days later. Elaine located the cousin in Idaho. His name was Martin Cole. He was 71 and had assumed his relative, Arthur, had been forgotten by everyone outside the family. When Elaine explained the memorial, Martin remained silent for a long time. Then he said, "Did Walter tell you about the harmonica?" Walter shook his head. Martin laughed through the speaker. Arthur had carried a harmonica for 30 years but knew only one song. He played it at every family gathering, always too slowly, and never noticed when people left the room. Walter wrote the detail down. Not because it was heroic, because it was true. After that, the work changed. The chapter office opened its meeting room twice a week. Judith organized intake forms. Elaine recorded interviews and scanned photographs. Travis transported boxes, repaired shelving, and learned that historical preservation required more extension cords than combat operations. Caleb Mercer brought rolled plans for a safer memorial path. He proposed moving the stones to a lower trail outside the unstable slope. The new route would include a packed, non-slip surface, simple handrails, and a small timber shelter for duplicate records. "The originals stay at the library," Elaine said. Walter objected. Elaine removed her glasses. "The originals stay at the library." Caleb concealed a smile behind his hand. People began arriving. A widow brought letters tied with faded blue ribbon. A retired mechanic carried a unit photograph wrapped in a kitchen towel. A diner owner remembered that one veteran ordered biscuits with black coffee every morning, but always left half the biscuits for birds behind the building. A former nurse described a quiet man who brought flowers to patients who never received visitors. He never signed the cards. Elaine added a new field to every record. What made this person more than a service file? The answers varied. A terrible singing voice, a devotion to stray cats, an obsession with crossword puzzles, a habit of carrying peppermints, a marriage proposal made beside a broken washing machine. Marlow attended most sessions. He had gained weight, though his legs still looked too long for his body. He wandered among chairs, sniffed boots, and settled beside whoever sat most rigidly. One afternoon, an elderly veteran named Franklin Shaw struggled to describe his late friend. His fingers shook around a paper cup. Marlow sat against his leg. Franklin lowered one hand onto the puppy's head and kept talking. Another evening, Marlow stole a butter cookie from Judith's open folder case. Judith stared at the empty wrapper. Walter declared it a tactical strike against organized sorrow. "It was theft," Judith said. "Most tactical strikes are." The room laughed. Even Judith did, though she denied it immediately. By the end of winter, the project no longer fit inside Walter's blue ledger. There were spreadsheets, recordings, signed releases, construction plans, and volunteers assigned to individual files. Walter still told stories. But now someone checked the spelling. Someone called the relatives. Someone else measured the trail. Memory had not become colder because it entered a record. It had become shareable. One evening, Travis arrived late and found Walter alone at the long table. The old military bag hung from the back of a chair. Marlow lay beneath it, asleep. Walter looked around the room at the labeled boxes. "I thought asking for help meant admitting I could not carry it." Travis set down 2 coffees. "You could not." Walter gave him an offended look. "You are poor at comfort." "I brought coffee." Walter accepted the cup. Outside, snow drifted quietly past the chapter office windows. Inside, 43 names waited in organized folders, no longer dependent on one aging man's memory. The work had not become lighter because the dead mattered less. It had become lighter because the living had finally taken hold of it together. By the following winter, the memorial no longer looked like something one man had built in secret. The old trail on the unstable slope had been closed and marked for restoration. Farther down the mountain, a new path curved through a gentler stand of pines, where the ground held firm beneath snow and thaw. Caleb Mercer had designed it with the same practical care he brought to bridges, railings, and stubborn machinery. The walkway was wide enough for 2 people to move side by side. Low timber rails followed the sharper bends. Resting benches stood at measured intervals, each placed where the trees opened toward the valley. Caleb claimed the views had dictated their locations. Judith Crane claimed the building code had. Both were correct, though neither enjoyed saying so. Near the entrance stood a small timber cabin with broad windows and a stone chimney. It had once been a storage shed, but volunteers had rebuilt it into a modest visitor's room. Inside, copies of letters and photographs rested in climate-safe frames. A listening station allowed visitors to hear recorded stories from relatives, neighbors, and former comrades. Elaine Foster had created the archive at the county library, where the original documents remained protected. Nothing valuable had been left to weather. Only the names had returned to the mountain. The old military bag hung on the central wall. It had been cleaned but not restored. Scratches crossed the faded olive canvas. One metal clasp had darkened with age. The lower seam still carried a stain from the snow where Travis first found it beneath Marlow's body. Judith had resisted displaying it. "It is not an archival container," she had said. Walter had replied, "Neither am I, and you keep putting me in front of visitors." Elaine solved the dispute by placing the bag inside a shallow glass case that could be opened during supervised programs. Beneath it, a plain wooden sign read, "No one here is only a name." Marlow spent most mornings lying directly below the display. Walter told visitors the dog did this out of loyalty to the memories inside. Travis suspected the floor there was simply closest to the cabin stove. A year had changed Marlow almost beyond recognition. The puppy whose ribs once showed beneath wet fur had grown into a broad-chested German shepherd with a thick black and gold coat. Both ears now stood upright, though the left leaned slightly when he was tired. The uneven black mask around his right eye remained, as did the pale patch beneath his chin. He wore a dark brown leather collar with a rectangular brass tag. Marlow had gained strength, confidence, and a deep belief that every person entering the cabin had come primarily to see him. Most visitors encouraged that belief. Walter often pointed at the dog and said, "That animal once weighed less than the bag." No one believed him. Marlow would be stretched across the floor like a fur rug, accepting admiration with the solemnity of a public official. The reopening ceremony was scheduled for January 14th. Travis had not chosen the date. Walter had suggested spring, when access would be easier. Judith preferred early autumn. Elaine argued for the anniversary of the archive's formal approval. Rebecca Vance was the one who noticed January 14th fell on a Saturday. She sent Travis a message asking whether the date would feel wrong. He stared at the question for half an hour. Then he answered, "No. Let it hold something else too." The morning of the ceremony arrived clear and cold. Fresh snow covered the valley, but the new path had been cleared before sunrise. Nora Bell had approved the weather plan, the emergency route, and the number of heated shelters. She also stationed 2 volunteers near the steepest bend, despite Walter's repeated claim that people have walked downhill for centuries without supervision. Nora answered, "And some of them fell." Walter considered this unnecessarily negative. By 10 o'clock, families and veterans began arriving. Some came with folded papers in coat pockets, others carried framed photographs wrapped against the snow. A few brought nothing except names they had not spoken in years. Walter stood near the entrance in his cleaned forest green ranger coat, white hair showing beneath his burgundy cap. He no longer transported the files or maintained the trail alone. His new role was to guide visitors from stone to stone and tell stories that Elaine had already verified. He still occasionally changed a date by accident. Elaine, standing nearby in a midnight blue coat with her wooden hair clip and round metal glasses, corrected him without raising her voice. Walter would pause and say, "The official version has interrupted." Elaine would answer, "The accurate version has arrived." Judith managed the check-in tin table with her black leather case and burgundy fountain pen. Caleb inspected every railing twice, though the final safety review had ended 3 days earlier. Travis watched them from the edge of the cabin porch. He wore a dark olive wool coat over a pale blue shirt. The small brass salmon keychain rested in his pocket. Beneath his glove, his thumb moved across its worn edges. Marlow sat beside his left leg. Travis had brought the blank stone. For a year it had remained on the shelf above his fireplace. Sometimes Marlow slept beneath it. Sometimes Travis took it down, placed it on the kitchen table, and considered what name should appear there. Not because he had forgotten. Because engraving the name felt more permanent than grief, and he had spent 6 years believing grief was the only proof of loyalty he still possessed. The stone sat now inside a canvas pouch beneath his arm. Rebecca arrived with 2 members of Daniel's family. She was 58, tall and composed, with dark blonde hair streaked silver at the temples. Daniel's eyes looked out from her face. Blue-gray, direct, and difficult to avoid. She wore a camel wool coat and carried an old film camera against her chest. Travis recognized it. Daniel had taken that camera everywhere and rarely remembered to load it correctly. Rebecca did not cross the gathering to meet Travis immediately. She greeted Walter, spoke with Judith, and let the morning unfold without making Travis's presence the center of it. He appreciated that. It also made approaching her entirely his responsibility. The ceremony began without a stage. There was no podium, honor guard, or amplified music. The group gathered in a loose circle beside the first stones, while snow shifted softly from the branches overhead. Walter welcomed them. He did not speak about sacrifice in grand terms. He spoke about the danger of reducing people to the worst or most impressive day of their lives. Then several relatives read short entries from the new archive. A mechanic's daughter remembered her father teaching everyone to change attire, whether they wanted to learn or not. A widow described a man who pretended to hate dancing, but knew every step when no one was watching. Franklin Shaw told a story about a friend who carried peppermints into every waiting room because fear always made people's mouths dry. The names did not sound distant. They sounded inconvenient, funny, stubborn, and alive. When Walter invited Travis forward, the crowd made room. Marlow rose with him. Travis carried the blank stone to an open place beside Samuel Pike's marker. Samuel's inscription had weathered 1 full year without fading. Brother, soldier, and terrible harmonica player. Walter stood near it, one hand resting on his ashwood walking stick. Travis removed the stone from its pouch. Caleb had prepared a small workstand and engraving tool. Travis could have completed the lettering earlier. He had chosen not to. He wanted the act to happen here. His first line was uneven. The second was steadier. Slowly, Daniel's name appeared. Daniel Vance. Beneath it, Travis added no rank, no dates, only a sentence. Never passed a stray dog without stopping. When he finished, Marlow sniffed the stone and sat beside it. Someone in the group laughed softly. Travis looked at the faces around him. He had prepared several sentences. They had sounded sincere in his kitchen. Now they felt borrowed. Daniel sang every song wrong, he began. Rebecca lowered her head with the beginning of a smile. He did not misremember 1 or 2 words. He seemed to believe lyrics were recommendations. The gathering relaxed. He made coffee strong enough to remove paint. He once drove 20 miles in the wrong direction because he refused to admit I was reading the map correctly. A few veterans murmured in recognition, and he stopped for every dog he saw near a road. Travis looked down at Marlow. Sometimes the dog belonged to a house 15 feet away. Daniel still stopped. The small laughter faded naturally. Travis reached into his pocket and closed his fingers around the salmon keychain. The night before Daniel died, he called me. Rebecca looked up. Travis kept his eyes on the stone. I saw the call. I was tired. I told myself I would call him in the morning. The cold air tightened in his chest. For 6 years, I treated that missed call like a sentence. I thought if I carried enough guilt, it would prove he mattered. I thought refusing every good day afterward was some kind of loyalty. No one interrupted. He called to ask me to go fishing. Travis turned toward Rebecca. I never told you I saw the call. Rebecca held his gaze. No, she said. You didn't. Her voice was quiet, not accusing. I knew you were avoiding us. I did not know what you were punishing yourself for. Travis swallowed. I should have answered. Yes, Rebecca said. The honesty struck harder than reassurance would have. She stepped closer. You should have answered because he loved you and wanted your company. Travis's eyes burned. Rebecca continued. But he did not call to give you responsibility for the rest of his life. The winter seemed to become very still. He asked you to go fishing, she said. He did not ask you to save him from something neither of you knew was coming. Travis looked away for 1 second. Then he stopped himself. For years, grief had trained him to turn his face before anyone could witness it. This time, he did not. Tears reached the lines beside his mouth and disappeared into his beard. He stood in front of Rebecca, Walter, Marlow, and the gathered families without pretending the cold had caused them. Rebecca did not embrace him immediately. She placed Daniel's old camera in his hands. I found a finished roll inside, she said. Most of the pictures are terrible. That sounds right. One is of you two beside a river. Travis held the camera carefully. The object felt heavier than its size. Rebecca smiled through wet eyes. "You are both looking in different directions." "That also sounds right." Behind them, Walter stood beside Samuel's marker. The letter had not removed his anger. Some mornings he still believed Samuel had abandoned him. Some nights he wondered whether another conversation might have repaired what one argument destroyed. The past had not become simple. It had become speakable. That was enough for one lifetime. Walter leaned toward Travis. "You engraved the line too deep on the left." Elaine turned from several feet away. "He did not. I am offering craftsmanship notes. You are holding the walking stick upside down." Walter checked. He was. Before he could recover his dignity, Marlow rose and seized one of Walter's gloves from the snow. "Marlow," Travis said. The dog looked directly at him, then ran. Walter reacted first. "That is government property." "It is your glove," Judith called. "I served the government." Caleb started after the dog. Two elderly veterans joined him, though neither moved faster than an urgent walk. Walter followed, waving his bare hand and issuing increasingly improbable commands. Marlow raced down the cleared path, the burgundy glove hanging from his mouth like a captured flag. The formal gathering dissolved. People laughed. Someone warned Walter not to slip. Nora moved to intercept him before he could ignore his own limitations. Marlow circled a bench, passed beneath Caleb's reaching hands, and finally returned to Travis of his own accord. He dropped the glove at Daniel's stone. Walter arrived several seconds later, breathing hard and deeply offended. "That animal has no respect for remembrance." Travis picked up the glove. He returned it. "To the wrong person." Daniel's name stood between them. For a moment, Walter's complaint remained suspended in the cold air. Then he laughed. The sound moved down the trail and through the pines, joined by others until the ceremony no longer resembled a ceremony at all. By late afternoon, most visitors had gone. The sky above the valley turned pale gold. A light snow began to fall, soft enough that each flake remained visible before touching the ground. Travis walked the path with Marlow beside him. The stones held names, but also lines about terrible cooking, patient hands, bad music, and quiet kindness. Snow gathered along their upper edges without covering the inscriptions. Walter and Elaine closed the cabin behind them. Judith carried the final signed forms to her car. Caleb checked one last rail, despite everyone ordering him to stop working. Travis reached Daniel's marker. Marlow leaned against his left leg. A year earlier, Travis had stood in this place holding a blank stone, because naming the dead had felt like surrendering them. Now he understood differently. A name was not a door closing. It was a way back. Across the clearing, the military bag remained visible through the cabin window, hanging above the sign. Marlow raised his head toward it. He did not know about service records, transfer forms, or old letters. He did not know the names the bag had carried. He knew its smell. The scent of Walter's hands, the roadside shelter, Travis's house, and the first winter in which several people had chosen not to leave one another behind. Snow settled on Marlow's dark back. Travis brushed it away. He had once believed snow erased tracks. Now he knew it only covered them until someone came looking. As long as a person returned to clear the path, read the stone, and tell one true story, the road remained, and no one named there had to walk it alone. Sometimes healing does not mean forgetting the people we lost. It means learning to carry their names without carrying the full weight of regret. Travis, Walter, and Marlow remind us that love often leaves a trail back to the living. A missed call, an unopened letter, or a memory we have avoided for years can still become the beginning of peace when we finally face it with honesty. May God give you courage to speak the name you have been afraid to say. Say grace for the moments you cannot change, and peace for the road ahead. Please share your thoughts in the comments and tell us who you are remembering today. If this story meant something to you, subscribe to the channel and join us for more stories of loyalty, healing, and hope.